I mean, I'm hearing him talk about monsters in charge of governments, the face of terror, nuclear weapons. Who are we talking about here, Iran or Israel? Because I would ask a few questions for your viewers to consider today as they listen to Doron. Which country in the Middle East has nuclear weapons? It's not Iran, it's Israel. Which country in the Middle East has not signed the NPT, the Non-Proliferation Treaty? It's not Iran, it's Israel. Which country in the Middle East is defying a UN Security Council resolution calling for that country to open up its nuclear facilities to IAEA inspectors? It's not Iran, it's Israel. Which country in the Middle East attacked 6 countries in the Middle East last year? 6. It wasn't Iran, it was Israel. So Iran, for all its many sins and crimes, is not the rogue nuclear state in the Middle East right now. That country is Israel. As you said, Piers, in your introduction, global public opinion has made it very clear that they see Israel as the threat to regional and international peace right now. You pointed out, Piers, that it's Benjamin Netanyahu dragging American Republican presidents into wars of choice, Iraq in 2002-3, and now Iran in 2025-2026. Let's just deal with your little speech in 2 ways. Number one, even if I were to accept your premise that Iran's nuclear program was a threat, even though the IEA and US intelligence say it wasn't, but let's accept your premise that it was a threat. This is not the way you stop a nuclear program. We had the JCPOA, which Israel opposed, Donald Trump opposed. Iran was enriching at 3.67%, had no pathway to a bomb under the JCPOA, as every major disarmament and nuclear expert said at the time. It was Israel, Netanyahu, Trump that opposed this, and now we have them at 60% enriched uranium because of the actions of Israel and Donald Trump. So if you claim to want to stop Iran from having a nuclear weapon, you've done a very bad job of doing that. In fact, if you're the Iranian leadership now, you probably want a bomb more now than ever before because you've been attacked by Israel 2 years running. That's one point. On the point about projection, the point I'm making is this, Doron, and you dodged it, so let me ask it again. The only country in the Middle East right now that can put its finger on a button and fire a nuke is Israel. The only country threatening to fire the nuke it has, Ben-Gvir smiled and nodded the other day when an Israeli journalist suggested nuking Iran, is Israel. Why is your country, Doron, you're a spokesman for the military, in violation of UN Resolution 487, which was unanimously passed, including by the Reagan administration in 1981, calling for Israel to open up its nuclear facilities to the IAEA? Why wouldn't you allow IAEA inspectors to look at your illicit secret nuclear weapons program?
First of all, I think you and I both know that there are no binding United Nations resolutions against Israel. Not in
yes,
any
there is.
sphere.
UN Security Council Resolution 487.
No, there's not a
You're wrong, Doron. You're wrong, Doron.
UN resolution.
You're wrong.
And there is a number of.
You're lying. Everyone can Google it right now. UN Security Council Resolution
against Iran's
487. People can Google it.
Mehdi, you just said it yourself.
You can talk over me.
Basically, just
UN Security Council Resolution.
You're saying that Israel.
487.
I'm sorry, Mehdi, one second. We can't
talk over me. I'll wait and make my point again. Okay, well, let me just make one point, and then I'll let you speak indefinitely. UN Resolution 487. You can Google it right now. People can watch it at home. In 1981, the Reagan administration voted for it. It calls on Israel to urgently open up its facilities to IAEA controls. That is a UN Security Council resolution, which is binding under international law. Israel has been in violation of it for 45 years. Why are you in violation of it? And do you accept that Israel has nuclear weapons? If you won't accept that, why should we take anything you say seriously on anything else?
It is not a binding resolution. However, I want to get your point because I think you just answered it for me. You said that this has been Israel, according to you, has been in violation for 40 years. So therefore, you're assuming Israel's had a nuclear weapon for 40 years. Can you tell me one time, Mehdi?
It has.
One single time.
Are you denying
Israel
that?
has threatened another country with nuclear war. Can you tell me, Mehdi, one time when an Israeli prime minister under an entire command center would have the ability with massive controls. Just one second.
I answered your question.
That is last week, Doron. To
Mehdi raises the point I have raised with a number of pro-Israeli guests in the last few weeks. Why is it that Israel does not admit it has nuclear weapons? And are you prepared to do so now?
Israel, as we all know, is a state that upon its very founding faced an existential threat from 7 countries that attacked it. We also know that in 1967, Israel was attacked by 3 countries, followed by 1973, followed by the Gulf War in 1981, followed by Hezbollah and Hamas. There's probably not been another country on earth
What's this got to do with you being transparent about having nuclear weapons?
According to the Non-Proliferation Treaty, which Israel has not signed and therefore is not bound by, Israel, if it maintains a nuclear arsenal, It has not used it, and if it maintains it, it is because it
Why are you
faces
saying if?
existential
You know
threats.
the
Hold
answer.
on, hold on. And since the Holocaust, which today is International Holocaust Day in Israel, it's Israeli Holocaust Day, and we are mourning tonight 6 million Jews that have died. Israel maintains the ability never to rely on anyone else, and therefore, Israel is not bound by the Nuclear Proliferation Treaty. It didn't sign on. Who is bound? The United States is bound, and it has followed it.
Yeah, but how can
guess
you
what?
demand?
Iran,
how
hold
can
on,
you
wait,
demand?
Pierce,
Yeah,
Iran,
Doran,
I answered
Doran,
you.
you're not answering my
It's because of
question.
an existential
Doran,
threat.
Doran.
And I just want to say Iran has signed it and violated
Doran,
it from 2002.
How can you, with a straight face, defend Israel's determination for full transparency by another country over its nuclear weapon ambitions when you have so far steadfastly ducked my very simple question as to whether Israel has its own nuclear weapons? And if
I have not ducked your question.
Do you
I'm
have them
answering
or not?
Pierce, and I explained to you that while I do not have firsthand knowledge of Israel's nuclear facilities, like you, I've heard the foreign reports.
You don't know. You don't know.
Hold on. I'm answering. Pierce,
as a reservist IDF spokesman, you don't know if Israel has nukes.
I would assume it is highly likely, as do you, that Israel has a nuclear program. Israel never signed the NPT, and the reason Israel never signed the NPT, I would assume, even though I wasn't in the room, is because Israel maintains its individual right to defend itself.
Let's put that to one side and deal with some of the stuff you've been saying. Number one, just some fact checks. A UN Security Council resolution is binding under international law. The Reagan administration voted for it, and you've never followed it. You proudly say you haven't signed the NPT. People watching at home will laugh their heads off. You're basically saying, because we didn't sign an international treaty, we don't have to follow international law. So then why doesn't Iran just pull out of the NPT? Why doesn't everyone just pull out of the NPT and do what Israel did? You say Israel reserves the right to defend itself. That old chestnut. No other country in the Middle East is allowed to defend itself. Israel is the country that bombed, count them, 6 countries in the Middle East last year. I can't think of a single country on planet Earth, aside from the US and Israel, that bombed half a dozen countries in the calendar year 2025. That is your country that you're defending, a rogue nation that bombs whoever it sees fit and then claims to be a victim. You say that, for example, you mentioned in your comments, you said 1967 we were attacked. Complete flat falsehood. Israel attacked first in 1967. Everyone knows that. It's a documented fact. You can call it a preemptive war, but you can't just lie on here and say you were attacked. You were not. You said that Iran pioneered the use of terrorism in the Middle East. Actually, that was the Zionist gangs. That was the Stern Gang and the Irgun who blew up British diplomats, bombed the King David Hotel, hung British sergeants, attacked British civilians and military and Arabs. It was actually Jewish and Zionist terror gangs that pioneered terrorism in the Middle East 100 years ago. So a lot of your facts are just completely wrong, and you're dodging Piers' central point, which is that you do have nukes. You know you have nukes. You're not allowed to say you have nukes, which makes this whole conversation so absurd. But the idea that you would come on TV and go after someone else's civil nuclear program. Remember, the US says Iran did not have a weapons program, while you yourself have weapons. That's the US intelligence community's view. They said last year. That is what the US said last year. In 2025, this is what the Director of National Intelligence said. We continue to assess Iran is not building a nuclear weapon and that Khamenei has not reauthorized the nuclear weapons program he suspended in 2003. A country that doesn't have nukes is being lectured by you, a country that does have nukes. It would be funny if it wasn't so tragic and you hadn't killed so many Iranian kids as part of your supposedly disarmament program.
Last summer, after the 12-day war, we were assured that the whole nuclear capability of Iran had been put back decades. It was done, flattened, it was over. 8 months later, a massive war was launched against Iran because it turned out that was all baloney. Now you're spewing, what many people will say is exactly the same rhetorical baloney again. But you're also conceding that if the enriched uranium remains in Iran, this war's a failure. And I don't see how
I
you
said
get
it isn't a failure because you'll set back a terror regime that operates with ballistic missiles, operates as
but the regime remains in place.
Hamas will have taken, again...
The Supreme Leader's son is the new Ayatollah, right?
Pierce.
Yeah?
Say this again, I'm sorry?
The Ayatollah, the Supreme Leader who was killed, his son is his replacement. The IRGC regime remains in place. There's been no protests from the people of Iran, and the Straits of Hormuz have become a massive weapon for the Iranians to use economically, as they also simultaneously attack all their Gulf state neighbours. So my point is the idea that at the end of this, Iran keeps its enriched uranium, you would have to admit, in that eventuality, the war's a failure.
Not just